Welcome to the 700 Club. First, we go to Israel, where the message is, stay strong, survive. That's the message the parents of an American hostage are sending their son after Hamas released a video showing him alive.
As his parents plead for the release of all the hostages held by Hamas, anti-Israel protests continue to spread on U.S. college campuses. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports.
Protesters clashing with police at the University of Texas as officers move in, arresting dozens. At USC, nearly 100 demonstrators were taken into custody. As the protests spread to more college campuses across America, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu railed against the anti-Semitic and anti-American rioters.
Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. When you listen to them, it's also because they say not only death to Israel, death to the Jews, but death to America. And this tells us that there's an anti-Semitic surge here that has terrible consequences.
Netanyahu added a warning about this exponential rise in anti-Semitism.
We have to stop anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine. It always precedes larger conflagrations that engulf the entire world.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and several colleagues came to witness the upheaval at Columbia. He called on Columbia's president to resign if she can't get the campus under control immediately.
As Speaker of the House, I am committing today that the Congress will not be silent as Jewish students are expected to run for their lives and stay home from their classes hiding in fear.
Johnson also threatened to stop federal funds to universities that don't create a safe environment for Jewish students. Dr. Michael Widlansky, an alumnus of Columbia and Middle East analyst, told CBN News his former campus reminds him of Germany in the 1930s.
It's Nazi Germany. It starts with delegitimizing somebody, trying to browbeat them into the ground, to scare them to staying in their holes, their huddles, their caves, so that they won't come out. It's the time that my father went through in Europe. His whole family was wiped out by Nazis. We know what Nazis can do. We know what this can lead to.
The protesters call Israel an apartheid state and accuse the government of committing genocide in Gaza for its war on Hamas, after the terror group killed 1,200 Israelis on October 7th and still hold more than 100 hostages. Wednesday, Hamas released a propaganda video showing one of those still in captivity, American Hirsch Goldberg, Poland. In a video, his parents expressing relief to see their son alive and encouraging him to endure.
Hirsch, if you can hear this, we heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days. And if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
Meanwhile, the UN is calling for an investigation into accusations of mass graves around Gaza hospitals that saw intense fighting recently. Israel released a statement that the claims are baseless. Hamas has also proposed a 5-year ceasefire if a two-state solution is implemented. But Israel steadfastly rejects the idea of a Palestinian state. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I've said it before, and I just think I need to say it again. When you accuse Israel of being an apartheid state, of trying to commit genocide in Gaza, you have turned the truth onto its head. The only country in the Middle East where Christians are growing is Israel. The population of Christians in Israel is growing. The only place where it's safe to be Druze. You can be Muslim and walk the streets of Tel Aviv in perfect safety. Now, contrast that with Gaza before October 7th. If you were Jewish, you would be killed. If you're Jewish and you go to Ramallah, there's signs right outside the city that the IDF says, don't go here because we can't guarantee your safety. Go back to 1948 when Israel declared its independence. Suddenly, it became illegal to be Jewish and be in the Middle East. In Iraq, it was a capital crime to be Jewish. If you were discovered, you would be hung. What kind of apartheid state is that? You're not even allowed to exist. Now, the genocide is solely on the part of the Palestinians. When you hear the slogan, from the river to the sea, what that means is Israel needs to be wiped off the map and every Jew killed. That's genocide. What is happening in Gaza today is entirely because of Hamas. They attacked Israel. Israel is defending itself. If you care for the citizens of Gaza, if you care for the innocent children there, the entire pressure should be put on Hamas. Will you release all the hostages? Will you unconditionally surrender and lay down your arms? Will you allow peace to govern Gaza instead of this radical Muslim ideology that calls for the extermination of Jews? That's the reality, that's the truth, and that's what should be protested. And here in America, have we forgotten? There are American hostages in these tunnels. Let us please bring our people home. Everything should be dedicated to that. Instead, we have the UN launching useless investigations accusing Israel of war crimes. Well, where's the investigation of Hamas? Where's the investigation of UNRWA, the UN relief agency that has been funding instruction in terrorism, had terrorists on their payroll? Where's that investigation? Where's the investigation of our own State Department that was reinstated funding for UNRWA? Do we not understand that that funding went into rockets and went into weapons so that Hamas could attack Israel? Let's put the truth back in place and stop this nonsense, because it is absolute nonsense. Well, later in the show, we're going to be speaking to a survivor of the October 7th attack. You'll have eyewitness testimony of what happened on that day. Well, in other news, right here in America, the Supreme Court will soon decide whether to strike down Idaho's near-total abortion ban. The justices heard arguments yesterday. Pro-life advocates say the case is an attempt by the Biden administration to reinstate a nationwide abortion mandate. Lori Johnson reports.
Pro-choice, that's a lie! Babies never choose to die!
Demonstrators on both sides of the abortion divide made their voices heard at the U.S. Supreme Court.
I don't want legislators telling me what I can do with my body.
Abortion is murder!
CBN's Tara Mergener was outside the High Court as it heard the second abortion case in the past month.
The outcome of this Idaho case will have nationwide implications, particularly in other places like Texas, that will only allow an abortion if the mother will likely die otherwise.
The Idaho law allows doctors to perform abortions only to save the mother's life. The Biden administration argues that violates a federal law known as EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which requires hospitals to stabilize ER patients who can't pay. Idaho denies the charge.
Idaho's law and EMTALA are consistent. They both seek to protect the lives of women and their unborn children.
Conservative justices pointed out EMTALA doesn't specifically mention abortion, but does identify an unborn child as a patient.
So in that situation, the hospital must stabilize the threat to the unborn child. And it seems that the plain meaning is that the hospital must try to eliminate any immediate threat to the child. But performing an abortion is antithetical to that duty.
The Biden administration says EMTALA requires doctors to perform abortions in cases where a woman's health is threatened, not just her life.
For example, a lot of times a pregnant woman in distress, she might start suffering liver damage or kidney malfunction.
Attorney Josh Turner, representing the state, suggested that could be interpreted to include mental health. He accused the Biden administration of trying to use the federal law to reinstate a nationwide abortion mandate.
There are 22 states with abortion laws on the books. This isn't going to end with Idaho, because all of the states that have abortion regulations define the health and the emergency exception narrower than EMTALA does. And so this question is going to come up in state after state after state.
On the issue of conscience, the Biden administration said EMTALA does not require doctors who oppose abortion to perform them against their will. The court will issue its decision on this case in June. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Just from a legal theory standpoint, we were looking to the courts to legislate for us because we can't figure it out. And I think that's an absolute mistake. It's been something where the Supreme Court has literally taken power from the people. And they've done it apparently with our willing cooperation. Democracy is messy. Passing legislation is messy. You have to have full debate. You have to have people participate in all of that. And we want unelected judges to decide these things for us. We need to stop that. It is antithetical to the Constitution, which begins with these words, we the people. We have to take responsibility for our culture, for our society, for our future, for the future of our children and our grandchildren. That is on us. We can't delegate that away to unelected judges. That's the fundamental problem with Roe. That's a fundamental problem with the concept, is it constitutional or unconstitutional? And if you view the Constitution as some kind of, quote, living document that you get to make it up as you go along and determine, well, it's not in the four corners of the document, but it ought to be, or we think it should be, or this is what Europe is doing and we ought to do it too. No, that's not the proper function of judiciary. It needs to be very conservative in its interpretation of constitutional rights. If it's not spelled out, what is spelled out in the Constitution, these things are left to the states, and that's where it belongs.